Welcome to News Around, the place where headlines become human stories and where we lift the curtain to reveal the quiet truths behind the flashbulbs. If you cherish the stories we tell and want to keep our investigations alive, please subscribe, press like, and if you can, click join to support our crew. Your engagement helps us bring you exclusive, deeply reported narratives that go beyond gossip and touch what matters: memory, choice, and the brittle architecture of celebrity love. In recent days, a tender, magnetic narrative has begun to unfurl, not on staged sets nor in shot lists, but in private messages, in unsent letters, and in those small, almost ritualistic gestures that people who once loved each other reserve for one another alone. At the center of this quietly swelling drama are two of Turkey's most luminous performers, Barış Arduç and Elçin Sangu. Their past collaboration became a cultural touchstone. Their chemistry on screen taught viewers to hold their breath. Now, as fragmented signs accumulate into hints and hints into pattern, the industry's gossip mills awaken and the audience finds itself watching a story that has always been more than the sum of its publicity stills. Across town, Elçin's gestures have been quieter, yet no less eloquent. Observers at a small, old-fashioned cafe in central Istanbul described a rare public hour in which she sat alone and read something on her phone with an expression that moved between smile and pause. She murmured a name, a brief, unembellished whisper, and the witness reported it as if it were a punctuation mark that reshaped the scene around her. For the faithful observer, these ephemeral acts are not frivolous. They are evidence of conversation carried out in the private grammar of lovers who have once occupied the same intimate space and therefore continue to share a kind of shorthand. When rumors that such a shorthand might still be active reached social networks, they found fertile ground. Fans began to stitch together what were once disparate moments into a coherent narrative, an unsigned bouquet that arrived at Elçin's door and was recognized for its singular taste. Two social posts separated by months but mirroring one another in sentiment and cadence. A chance appearance at the same industry gathering where, by all accounts, their eyes met and the room contracted around that glance. Each of these incidents, benign when isolated, became charged when seen in sequence, not evidence of a resumed romance necessarily, but rather of an enduring affinity that resists erasure. The interventions of representatives and publicists have their own grammar of deflection and clarification, but between statements and silences the public always seeks a story that confirms its longing. One entertainment correspondent relayed a detail that read like the prologue to a possible reunion. After the private event where both stars crossed paths, Barış sent a courteous message, an acknowledgement of a presence, not an entreaty, and Elçin responded with an understated emoji. To many observers, this exchange resembled the first cautious steps of adults who have learned to speak without overcommitting. In such exchanges, the punctuation is measured, the risk is calibrated, and yet every minimal sign is laden with history. A recurring motif in this modern romance is the way that memory behaves like a tangible object. Barış, it seems, has revisited places once shared with Elçin, a corner table in a well-worn restaurant, a bottle of wine they favored, the very route home they once favored when evening slipped into night. Those domestic topographies serve as anchors for recollection, and when he sits at the table where they once dined, he appears to be engaging in a ritual of reconstruction, not exhibition. For Elçin, the rituals are subtler. A photograph posted at an hour when few watch, a line of text that reads like a private aphorism, a wistful melody absorbed publicly through the architecture of a social post. In both cases, the gestures are aimed at preserving something fragile, the possibility that a shared past might one day become a shared present again. The phenomenon of fans turning hope into campaign is also an important social force in this narrative. Online collectives that once edited together the pair's most tender scenes have reconstituted themselves as modern shipbuilders, constructing hashtags and playlists of memory that function less as fandom and more as a civic ritual of longing. The hashtag movement that followed these recent signs, a sprawl of remix videos, black and white montages, captions that read like letters, speaks to a communal desire for closure or continuation. Fans do not only wish to watch the couple reunite on screen but also to see a private reconciliation made visible in real life. This collective yearning creates pressure. It transforms speculation into expectation, and expectation into a force that influences decision-making at managerial tables. Yet the central question remains: will nostalgia become destiny? There are pragmatic obstacles, of course. Both artists have matured, both carry professional identities that they must steward carefully. Reuniting, even for a film or series, carries the risk of letting narrative desires override authentic readiness. What matters most in these scenarios is consent, the consent of the artists to re-enter a terrain that will be watched, dissected, and Monetized. For that reason, any possible rapprochement will likely emerge not from a single dramatic confession, but from a slow choreography of small steps: a private meeting, then another, then perhaps a creative conversation that leads to a proposal both artistic and personal. At this juncture we must note the strange dignity of restraint. Unlike tabloid spectacle, which demands theatre and confession, there is a kind of nobility in the way both figures have insulated themselves with silence. Silence, in this context, is not avoidance but a considered reticence that allows feelings to be tested without being immediately commodified. When they finally speak, if they speak at all, their words will carry weight precisely because they were not uttered into a vacuum but held in reserve until meaning could be rendered responsibly. That possibility that a love once public may be allowed to reclaim privacy before returning to the public eye, if it chooses to at all, is itself a radical alternative to the culture of instantaneous revelation. To close, consider the paradox at the heart of all great stories about love: memory both binds and frees. It is memory that keeps a past affection alive, but memory also permits the reinvention of feeling in new forms. Barış and Elçin's possible second act, should it come to pass, will not be merely a reprise of former roles, it will be a fresh composition written in the fragile ink of time and choice. Until they decide how to proceed, we can only observe that what remains between them is not merely nostalgia for what was, but a capacity to imagine what might still be. Thank you for listening to this deeply human story here at News Around. If this piece moved you, please like and share so we can continue to create narratives that treat celebrity with curiosity and compassion rather than with spectacle. Don't forget to subscribe for more exclusive features, and if you're able, support the channel by clicking join. Your contribution keeps long-form storytelling alive. Finally, because we love hearing from you, tell us in the comments, which Turkish celebrity couple should we explore next? Who would you like News Around to follow with the same patient, cinematic eye? We read every message and often use your suggestions for our next deep dives. Until our next story, remember that headlines are brief but human lives are long. Sometimes, love simply waits for the right moment to speak again. This is News Around, where each headline is treated like a heartbeat.